What's up, guys? In this episode, we're going to talk about memes. Take meme on. Stay tuned. PTSD is not a mental illness. It is a psychological injury. How does your brain change with PTSD?
So is that the one I sent you?
Yeah, the most recent one.
Yeah. So I think I just want to start, I think, if I can, with this whole idea about how we're getting our information about like psychological issues within the first responder world. So how do you get your info? I think is a good question. Is somebody alive and well in the fire service?
Well, on my end of things, I was just talking about this with somebody. We don't actually have anything fully set up. We have a critical incident stress management, but we don't have a full, study on it or, full program set up. So I get most of mine off the internet. Right. I get most of mine from things people share, articles they read. I am still learning myself, so that kind of gets, everybody takes things differently as they talk about it. And that's where you're saying earlier, like, people are starting to change the name because people have opinions on things in different ways. So honestly, I ignore a lot of memes that get shared unless I can go to a link or a resource to a website that I know is credited. So I try, and that's something I'm having trouble with a lot of the memes people share. And like you were saying, people are aware. So share the meme as long as it connects to a legitimate resource that people can go and study on what it is that these memes are talking about. Because a brief meme, even like the one you're sharing now, I'm not getting a whole lot of information. I'm just getting key points that someone wants me to know. And that's it.
So so I think this is really important. You're a rare gem out there, because if you're looking to find out where this stuff actually comes from, I think that you're already a world ahead, right? Because most people, and I think we're all guilty of it in some fashion, right? But most people see it and go, I want to support this, or I think that it's a good message, and we just hit share, right? And so, the one I sent you, and I think that you'll post up, I actually wrote about. So this was the inspiration for an article that just came out in January's issue of the Canadian Firefighter. And it's looking at how we talk about PTSD and how we, how there's a fine line between making us like firefighter clinicians and making us just effective at kind of pulling out bullshit. And I think that this is the important piece. So the one we're talking about, so how does your brain change with PTSD, right? So it comes up with three points in the brain. So these are all brain structures. So the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. Big fancy word, just saying the control center, right? So that's the thing at the very forefront of your brain that essentially makes you a human.
Right.
So, on the face of it, looks fine, right? But do you see, like, when you read that, is there anything that you think is missing?
Well, how do they come across all this, right? Where's the information? I can see, the hippocampus shrinks. Okay, why does it shrink? What is it that's making it do that? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that so first and foremost, the meme we put up, all of the information they included is accurate. But I find it interesting that we'll say first, why does that shrink? And we can talk about that, of course, but also, where's the research, right? And so if I want to know that something is actually a thing, where's the research, right? And so we know that in PTSD, we have changes in the structures of the brain. And so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was the argument that you and I kind of touched on in the last video around why we might consider it an injury versus a disorder. Right, is that it happens to us and there's a structural change. I think that's what we were talking about, right? And I think that I maybe aggressively chime back that if you smoke a cigarette, your brain changes, right? And so our brain is changing constantly, all of the time. It's just constantly changing,
rewiring itself on the regular.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I look at something like this, I want to know what's the research on and why are they drawing from it, right? And so what they're giving you is a factual kind of breakdown. So what I did was I actually built their argument up in this article. So I said, because they didn't include any research, here's the research that shows why this is doing it, and in what studies have found that this is actually true. So we have structural changes, right? And that's the basis for why it's an injury. And so I said, if we want to call PTSD an injury, that's fine, but let's have a good reason for it. As I've said before, as far as I can tell, we're all standing on, a 13th floor building on the 14th floor, but we all know what floor we're really on, right? There's no way to crush the stigma out of something if you got to fucking change the name. That's just the way I see it. Until there's an argument that makes sense to change it, right?
If you can back it up, right? Like if there's something there that you can utilize, this is why we should change it, then fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so, the hippocampus shrinks, right? So if the hippocampus shrinks and that's exclusively a PTSD symptom, then let's call it PTSI, right? But we know the hippocampus shrinks in things like schizophrenia and psychosis and Alzheimer's disease and depression and obsessive compulsive disorder, just for instance, right? So we have
good relation, actually.
we have brain changes in all of those things. Every one of those things that happens, right?
So are they injured then?
That's right. It's a good question. It's a very great question. Some may say, yeah, right? Like if we talk about dementia, for instance, right? Or Alzheimer's, we're actually getting the brain's actually eating away at itself, right? So we actually, if you take a screen of it, you can actually see holes in it, which again, in my eyes, shows more damage, right? So we might want to actually call Alzheimer's an injury in that way, right? Increased activity in the amygdala, so we have that in anxiety and depression, insomnia. But what was really interesting, and I think I touched on this last time, so when it says increased activity, right? Do you want to know the one thing that I think, and I'm making this assumption about you, but I'm certainly nerdy enough to admit to this. There's something that you and I might have both participated in on the regular that actually can damage the amygdala.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that I've done that could possibly damage that.
Oh, go on.
I don't even want to.
Right. So we actually found in one study, I found that video gaming disorder actually shrinks the amygdala. So we're just talking about an increase in activity when we're talking about PTSD, right? This is that hypervigilance. This is the being hyper aware and being on edge, and the emotional dysregulation.
Which could be caused like via playing video games, like we had discussed previously.
Yeah. So in PTSD, this is what the amygdala is doing for us, making us kind of that hypersensitive to emotional kind of reactivity. And so we can see like lability and emotional dysregulation and all of these things, fear kind of constantly, right? And so we see that with amygdala. So video gaming disorder actually does more damage to the amygdala than PTSD does. And then, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex again, and I'm boring all of the listeners here, right? But we even know that from things like depression and stress and schizophrenia and obesity, which is not a stranger to the fire service. Not even, no. Yes.
That's weird. I've never known that.
Right? And why would you, right? Like, because we're not talking about this. So, like, we're working so hard to sell a story that
everybody's jumping on the bandwagon and they don't know why. Yeah.
And they're doing it, like, every one of them, I think, is doing it out of the goodness of their heart, right? Like, we want to help each other. It's not what this is about, but somewhere along the lines, we've decided that in order for us to accept it, it needs to be an injury.
And the biggest thing that I see it is that's a social move, right? It's easier for people to picture than it is for a disorder, like, because you can't see it, right?
That's right.
Unless you're actually looking, or that person has gone so far off the deep end that it's too late.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things where we look at it only one step forward, right? So I don't disagree. I think, and at the end of the day, if calling it a disorder, calling it an injury gets you through the fucking door, then do that, right? Like, do it. I don't care. But if we want to talk about it right, and we want to get it right, because here's the problem, is that as I was talking about in that article, right, we have all of these other disorders that can come into play, including obesity, right, which we don't tend to see as a disorder. But so we have all of those things, but we won't call those injuries. We call those disorders. So the moment that I change one diagnosis for the purpose of changing it, for the purpose of making it more relatable or a little bit softer to process, right, a little bit more acceptable, a little bit more all of these pieces, I've immediately drawn a line in the sand between that and everything else. Right.
It's now secluded from everything, and you can't really utilize the other things to do anything with it, right?
Well, and you ostracize all of those other people, right? So, like, speaking of memes, I have one out where I've got the creepy old Harold guy, right? And it's like, ignoring my emotions, it causes all of the issues. But other than this crippling anxiety, I feel fine, right? Yeah. Because we can't.
I did see that one. Yeah.
We can't talk about anxiety, and if we talk about anxiety, if we talk about anxiety, right, it just becomes a symptom of PTSD or PTSI, that's wrong. It's not. It's associated if I have that diagnosis. But if I'm feeling anxiety and I don't have all of those other things, it's not a symptom of PTSD. It's a diagnosis. It's debilitating in and of itself. 100%. Yeah. That's the frustrating part for me. Like, sitting on this side of things where people come through your door and, the first thing out of their mouth is I have PTSD. Like, and, a lot of the times it's not. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the times it's not. You know what I mean? And it's all of those other things.
Combination of a few other things built up from day-to-day life, right?
Well, I think what happens, right? So if I trail down the anxiety just a little bit, I know that we're trying to stay on topic, right? But if I trail down that road just a little bit, we can recognize that if I'm having, if I'm anxiously thinking about bad calls, right, because of my anxiety, and then I'm going to go something like, oh shit, I'm thinking about bad calls. That's that part of that PTSD thing that I'm super afraid of, right? What happens in our mind is we go, don't think about that. Don't think about that. Don't think about that, right? So here's my challenge to you. Don't think of a pink elephant.
Now he's pink.
and so
it's true though, and I can see that. Like when I think about anxiety, you can get anxiety from a lot of things. I get anxiety usually at night when I'm sleeping at the station and I'm waiting for the tones to go off. They might not go off at all night, but I'm laying there like heart's running a little faster than normal because I know at some point a really loud lady is going to start yelling at me from the sky. So the ladies in the sky keep on calling.
So I think that this is a topic that you and I could spend a lot of time on. I know today we're just crushing some memes, but I think that when we talk about things like anxiety, you walk down the street and somebody says, I have anxiety, they have test anxiety, they have this anxiety. All of this is real, right? But as your example, is yours anxiety or is yours worry or concern?
Right.
Right. So if I have worry or concern, because when will it go off? What will it go off of for? And is this going to be an easy night or is this going to be a hard night? Do I have to go, stand there with the stop sign in -42 weather tonight, or do I get to stay in bed? And so you have reasons to be concerned about that, right? But is it anxiety? Like, is it this excessive worry or concern about a specific situation, object, or social situation, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's all about that. It's all about that language piece, right? So, yeah.
I guess the big thing we're getting at really with the whole memes thing is, like, on my end, I see some memes and I'm like, that's just not right. Why are we sharing this? Like, I'm not going to share that. That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you share that with no like, I could understand share a meme, but then add a link to it. Where did the meme come from? Yeah. What is it referencing to? Yeah. How is it backed up? Like, and you were saying that this article that you wrote here in Canadian Firefighter is a diagnosed a diagnostic dilemma, and that's related to that meme that you sent me, okay?
Yeah,
and that's kind of what triggered this article.
That was the inspiration. Yeah, I saw that.
I'll post the meme so sort of viewers can see it anyways, and then
so like the thing is, and this is the trick, right? Is that why should you know any different? Because you read that, and it's they're not lying. You know what I mean? Like, they're not lying, but the premise behind it, the reason that they're bolstering that up, is to push a movement, and that I think is wrong, right? Like if we want to talk, if we want to talk objectively about what brain structures are impacted in the PTSD diagnosis, that meme is a perfect one, right? This is the brain structures that are impacted, right? Add some research, and I'm actually happy with it. But the point is that it's pushing an agenda, right? Because we know right now.
Yeah, it's one directional.
Yeah. You know, and I've actually had this said to me, right, in a debate. Well, not really a debate, just a slight disagreement, we'll call it, with, you know, some projects that I'm part of, and I said, you know, I don't want this to hold us back, and I'd like to collaborate, and I think this is great and all of that stuff. But I said, you know, I think it's problematic to call these things injury, and the response is, we're going with injury because it's progressive.
Right. See, it moves what we want forward.
That's right.
It's taking our agenda one step in the direction we want to go.
That's right. 100%.
Again, if you're going to do that, then go full-fledged and make the connection between why you're calling it an injury. You know, it's okay to say that I'm trying to make it more relatable to the general public. You know, I'm trying to make it more understandable to people when I'm talking about it, that it's an invisible injury. You know, like you say injury, and I think, okay, something's not right. I broke my finger, and you can physically see that, right? Yeah. And there's pain caused to it, something that you can physically see. I get on the end of that, but don't utilize it in an uneducated way to push your agenda.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you know, this is my fear, and maybe it's unfounded, and I'm sure maybe someone will let me know if it's unfounded, which is fine. But my fear is that by changing it, we just further stigmatize all of the other people. Right? It's like you want to crush stigma, you want to get rid of this fucking stigma thing, whatever that is, and we just ostracize everybody else that has, you know, crippling anxiety or debilitating, you know, major depression or bipolar or whatever else, right? You just you know what, fuck them. You know, I'm just really need to be able to accept that, you know, I work this job and I got this, you know, mental injury. And it's like, you know, what would be a lot easier is if we could all just say, you know, a disorder is fucking a hard thing to deal with no matter what it is. And if we could just get there, then why bother? Like, what does it matter what it's called, right? What does it matter whatever the thing is that it's afflicting? It's like, yeah, I've got a mental health disorder, and it fucking blows just as much as the other mental health disorders do. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. There's I think that there is real argument to say about severities, but, you know, calling it this one thing an injury, you know, it's just, it's made for our group that just are so afraid of breaking that armor, right? Of having that shield down that says that we're anything less than what the public says we are. And I, you know, this is the reason I wrote the article. This is the reason I do these talks. This is the reason I get in shit, is because I think that this is just wrong, right? I think that we need to really just, if we want to get rid of stigma, we got to attack stigma. Like,
that's right.
Not the labels.
And stigma with everything, not even just narrowed in on one thing, right? It's first responders for us, because that's our field. That's where we're at right now, and that's what we know. And we don't want to spread false knowledge. But you're right. Like, you need to attack it as a whole, and you need to work together in all of it, right? Like, when people say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm bipolar," but it's the same thing. He's still dealing with something shitty, you know. Yeah. And he probably has a hard time coming out and talking to people about it, right? Oh, sure. So that's stigma. People are being, you know, pushed down because of these things, and they want nothing more than to just get help, and they don't know where to go because they don't want to be judged.
Well, and they have, like, I mean, if we want to be real about it too, they have a real reason to fear that judgment, right? Because it's all over the fucking news all the time. right?
Yep.
Some slimy piece of shit does some sketchy shit to somebody that comes out, and now we have a bunch of people going, well, there ain't no fucking way I'm talking about this. And they're right. Like, they would have a right. They have every right to be worried about this. So, stigma certainly is a topic that we could spend a lot of time on, but, so it's not simple, it's complicated, but it's I think that this one really is a simple step, right? It's like we're spending so much time and energy creating these things, right? But everybody's pushing kind of this thing forward, and we're creating diagnoses that don't exist. We're pushing a story that is separating us again from the clinical world. When right now at this time, especially with the we're talking about line of duty deaths now being less than suicides in some of the services, is that we really need to make this connection between the professional services and us. Like, how do we build that bridge?
Yeah, and having line of duty deaths being outnumbered by suicides is that's shitty. That shouldn't happen, right? Yeah. Like, we, especially when we preach, we're family, we're family, and I mean, some services more than others, but it shouldn't be an issue. It's one of those things. That's where I'm excited about doing this channel, because hopefully we can bridge the issue and the service, the resource, so that conversation actually gets started and these people can feel okay finding that. That's why having all the support we have with some of the people that want to meet with us, maybe we can bring that education and we can share that with people. And that's where I think with these memes, I'm having a hard time with them, because there's nothing there. There's no meat and potatoes. You can see it, you can smell it, but you can't taste it. So it's that connection needs to be made. If we're going to share a meme, share a resource behind it, share some education. I'm really excited because people like to watch things now. People like to listen to things. They would prefer not to read things. And a share is easy. It's really easy. But if somebody's really struggling, they see that meme and they go, yeah, I know what's happening, but how do I fix it?
Well, I think
that's what frustrates me.
Yeah, I think that's valid, and but I think the other thing that frustrates me is just first off, we have kind of what we call that, just kind of like a straw man kind of situation where we have all of this information kind of leveled at something that it's not really a problem, doesn't really exist, right? But then we have others with just like misinformation, right? So we have another one of these memes, I think, right? So a disorder you were born with, and PTSI is a reaction to something done to you, right? A disorder you're born with. Oh, really? So I think that when we put information like this up, right, that's problematic.
I get it in the sense that it's a reaction. Yeah, your body is trying to help you deal with that.
Right.
There's a reaction there, but the whole thing is not a reaction. Like, you are experiencing something that was caused.
Yeah. Well, and I think I really enjoy when you're reading these things, right? Because that's what you picked up on. But the line right above it is like the most egregious, just completely wrong piece of information.
Injury, not a disorder?
No, a disorder you're born with.
Oh yeah, disorder you're born with. Yeah.
Like, it's such that is so fucking not right? Like, just at any stretch of the imagination. And so now
you're not born with a broken leg.
Holy fuck, right?
Like something had to cause that, right? Like, we're all born a clean slate.
Yeah. Okay, well, we won't go down any philosophical routes here, right? But
you know what I mean.
But like, what they're saying here is that as a child coming straight out of the womb, if you have anxiety, you have generalized anxiety disorder, you had that right out of the womb, right? Right out of the womb, you've always had that, which isn't fucking true. You have your schizophrenia, right? Right out of the womb, you had schizophrenia, right? We know that that's not fucking true, right? And so we have all, it's just, these are the things that frustrate me, right? Like, it comes from a place of caring. It does. I think that it does, at least. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But why even include that piece of shit, right? Why even include this junk nonsense on there? Because that's doing nothing but hurting somebody, right? You know what I mean?
Another connection here too. PTSI is a normal reaction to abnormal situations. So then, was there an abnormal situation when they were in the womb?
Right. Yeah.
And that caused them the PTSD that happened later on in life?
Right. So, I think that when we're talking about, post-traumatic stress disorder or injury for the purpose of this one, right, is recognizing that when we go into a situation that is traumatic, right, our brain is going to try and make sense of that. For some of us, it'll do an all right job. And the reason it does an all right job isn't because we're stronger or better or whatever, right? It's because we got lucky in a lot of different ways. The experiences that we had in our life help shape that, right? The biology, the genes that come down to us that, thanks mom and dad, that those are also play a role, right? Your level of awareness to self, your ability to navigate emotions, right? But there's another thing too, in that we know that people that tend to suffer from disorders tend to use an avoidance strategy for navigating difficult situations, right? And this isn't a fault of character. This is just something that has been rewarded, right? And so, and this is too simplistic to be, fully accurate. So, before anybody blast me, let me put that disclaimer in there, right? But we can look at this, all human behavior we can look at in two general ways for the purposes of making a general argument, which is, we're doing two things, either decreasing pain or increasing pleasure. That's what we do, right? And so any of the behaviors that you do for the next day, and now this will be a fun party trick for you. So it's like, whatever you do in the next day, try to label this. Well, am I eating this donut because this is decreasing my pain or increasing my pleasure? Depending on your day, it might be doing one or both.
One or the
right?
other. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like emotional eating. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. So then I look at this and I go, okay, but so my call, the big call that I wrote about a lot of times is the suicide by train, right? And so it's like, okay, so now I have an option, right? So I can avoid train tracks because they remind me of that.
Right.
But then that becomes pretty difficult because I can't plan my routes always around train tracks. I can't, I don't always know that there'll be a set there. And so then it's like, well, okay, well then, you know what? I just will only drive where I know that there's none. And so then, poof, I put a wall up, right? My world gets a little bit smaller. And so then this grows. But we don't just avoid situations, we also avoid emotions, right? I don't want to be reminded of that anxiety, those pieces that are coming up, right? So I'm going to...
So this is your brain's self-defense mechanism, is what
you're saying. That's right.
Okay.
And so your brain is just trying to protect you.
That's right.
And so this is why I think I do agree that it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, right? Because your brain's just doing A, what it's trained to do, and B, what it's programmed to do.
That's right.
But that's not supporting the fact that it needs to be an injury. That's just saying this is how the brain fucking works, right? Like this is just the brain fucking working. This isn't an indication of anything other than that, right? And so then at the next one we have is an injury, not a disorder, right? Like I just have a sentence. And then I have this piece of shit line in here that I please just remove, right? A disorder you were born with. It's like, talk about, the irony here is it's killing the stigma is the hashtag. You've just created a whole shit ton of it.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Like you've just created...
Because those counteract each other, right?
You've just created a fucking avalanche of stigma by putting something like that in there. You want to kill it, right? Like this is the shit that pisses me off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. Like that comes off pretty aggressive too. Like so the entire meme is pretty aggressive.
Sure.
And I don't even think there's like a resource to go with it. Suicide awareness, prevention, killing the stigma. It almost looks like something somebody random just kind of made up.
Sure. And they probably did it, like I said, I haven't run across a meme that I don't think is meant well, right? Like it's well-meaning. But it's like if we don't even do like an iota stitch of research, right? Like, and it just resonates, right? So this is the progressive. I can get this thing shared probably like 1,000 times, right? If I put this, because it'll be language that we speak to. It'll be that aggressive language that first responders attend to. It'll be using the progressive language of injury and not disorders. Like I can get 1,000 shares, right? And then, and this is the mindset, I'm sure, and then maybe we do something about this stigma. But the fact of the matter is it's fucking clinically incorrect, right? And we're talking about clinical issues here. We're talking about mental health.
But on the big, like when you're sharing it like that and you're trying to get that reach, is there a purpose behind it? Are you going to actually follow up with what you got going there and educate the people that have decided to click or follow or whatever else, right? All these people that you've made this meme out to, and the meme isn't actually educational. It's just a bunch of things saying support crushing the stigma, right?
That's right.
And so is there anything to back that up, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I think that they can be great, you know, they can be good. But you're right. I mean, even if they didn't have a resource attached to them, but that would be like, that's ideal, of course. Like if we're going to send information, if I'm going to grab your attention with something, I want it to be linked to something else, right? Like if I want to grab your attention, then I'm going to grab it and I want to send you somewhere, usually, right? To do something, hopefully good, right? But, you know, but this is the way we absorb our information now, right? This is the way we, you know, this is the way we're getting our info. And I don't blame anybody for sharing, right? Not a single person do I blame, but it just sets my brain on fire sometimes. Just reading these things and just being like, you know, I've been working pretty hard for 5 years, and it's like this meme gets further reach, and it's just full of shit. You know what I mean? And it's like you know, from a selfish point of view, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, so you know what? I'm just going to change everything I own I'm just going to make shit up, and I'll add injury on it, and I'll send it out there, and I'll probably get more reach than I ever have, right? But I won't do that because I think that causes further harm.
well, and that's the thing, right? That's what I was just about to touch up on, is you're now educating people who are uneducated. So let's educate them properly, right? Yeah. That's why myself, I don't plan on doing heaps of talking until I am educated in what it is we're talking about. I will do more of the question asking, and I will get your thoughts going and let you ramble so people can hear, because you're the one who writes articles and you're the one who does the research and you're the one who has the education and you're starting down the actual clinical end of things. And in my head, when I see a meme, I'm like, it's not educational. And what you are saying is teaching people who are uneducated about it the wrong thing. It just like I get it, fine. Spread the awareness. We need the more awareness, the better, and the more education we can get out there, the better. But let's not just stop with something that's incorrect.
You know, I think that there's some good ones. You know what I mean? Like there is some good ones out there, but it's like, you know, I guess it's just more I've been thinking recently, and one of the reasons why I think you and I kind of gravitated towards this is that this is how people are getting their information, right? Like I make a funny, you know, meme about MSA's space helmets, right? And like that shit's just humor, right? Yeah.
Dude, what kind of essential oil should I use for this cut?
Yeah, fuck. So, but it's like, you know, I just get so irritated too, because we're people that, just as cultures, we're people that are really loyal, you know. And so if I can sell you something that sounds legit, speaks to all of those things that, you know, dodges all of the bullets we needed to dodge, and I can get in, well, then I'm now just, you know, I've been welcomed into these situations. I've been welcomed into this culture, and now I have a message that's just kind of spreading, you know. And I don't know if this even exists really, but you know, a meme like that just kind of spreading this, you know, well, you know, it's an injury because you're born with a disorder. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? Like, if you want to ostracise people, that's how you're going to do it. That's
exactly. Yep.
So.
Yep. Well, I have this one I sent to you. I want to touch up on it before we actually go.
Yeah.
Just to kind of wrap everything up a little bit more on a positive note, I kind of want to get your say on it, because I find people who are uneducated are always asking, how do I treat somebody who's suffering? One, how do I find out that they are? And how do I not trigger them? And essentially this one says, what not to say to a friend experiencing a mental health problem.
Oh yeah.
And,
yep.
it kind of lists off a few different things, like you need to get out more. It's all in your head. But you have nothing even worry about. Stop complaining all the time. I always knew you had a problem.
Right.
There is nothing even wrong with you. Like, I mean, are those all decent points of things not to say, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're great, but you know, the funniest thing about this is why I'm laughing when you're asking me these things, because it's like what not to say to a friend. It's like I've heard fucking clients say that when they come and sit down in the chair, right? Like I've heard people say this to themselves, right? Like I have no reason to be worried, right? I have no, I always knew this would happen to me, or, I'm just negative. That's just the way it is, right? I just need to snap out of it. I've heard all of these said, right? Like, yeah. I'm just not working hard enough, right? Like, I don't think that I'm depressed, right? They'll score out the fucking wazoo on a screener, which isn't a diagnosis tool. It's not that, but they'll score where we know that we can be clinically pretty accurate in saying that they'd have depression. It's like, well, I don't feel sad. It's like, because that's not the only thing, right? That's not the only fucking thing that can happen to you, right? So, like, this one's great. I think, like, if you're somebody, here's the inside on this one. This meme's actually great. So here's the inside. So if somebody says something, like, say you come to me and you say, man, I'm feeling like shit. I think I might be anxious. And I said, just snap out of it. Get over yourself, right? If I'm saying that to you, why might I say that to you? What do you think the purpose of me saying that to you is?
To get me not to talk to you, really.
That's
why? A defense mechanism for you.
That's right. 100%, right? And so I'm going to say that to you because I actually don't, your emotions make me uncomfortable.
That's right.
Right. And so it's not, and this is the fix-it people in our lives too, right? So these are what we call negative supports. These are people that love and care for us, but just don't know how to fucking help us at all, right? So they say things like, all you got to do is, if you just listen to me, if you just get out more, right? But what happens is, like, they get so uncomfortable with our emotions that their defenses kick on, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get you out of that room.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And so it's finding people. So this sheet's a good, this is a good meme where we can look at this and go, have I ever heard a friend say this to me, right? Because then I might have some insight into saying, actually, they just can't handle my emotion. It makes them so uncomfortable that they need to, like, get me out of there. And I can shuffle them down the list of people I'm going to call when I'm in crisis, right?
That's right. See, and that's where, again, with the education, and hopefully we can kind of provide that here. But the one thing I want to say is just, I always tell people that talk to me, because I get people quite a bit message me and say, like, how can I handle this situation? What can I do? Who do I talk to? And I always say, well, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not educated enough to be giving you my opinion, but I will tell you that there is help out there, and I will help you find it. Or if I'm not feeling comfortable with the situation or the conversation, I'll tell them straight up, like, I'm not too sure of the entire situation. I don't know how much you want to share with me. I can give you my own personal opinion, but at the moment, I'm not feeling comfortable talking to you about it. Mm-hmm. Would you like help finding someone to talk to about it? Yeah. So I think the big thing, and I'm going to ask you this as well, what should we say as that person who is being told not to say these things?
So what do you mean? What should we say?
So, like, told? Yeah, we get the what not to say, but what should we say?
That depends. So what you said, I thought was really great, because you're being honest with them, and honesty is one of the most important things. I think if it's somebody you care for and you want to help them, right? I think the best thing to say is just, I don't know what to do, but I'm willing to, like, walk with you. I'm willing to sit with you. I'm willing to talk with you. I'm willing to pour you a coffee, right? Like I'm willing to just help you through this moment, right?
In your opinion, do you think that's something that is always a wise thing? Like, say I am out of the blue, willy-nilly, and you come talk to me, you have an issue. Mm-hmm. Will it make anything worse if I was to sit down with you and try and just talk you through?
Well, it depends.
Or is that one of those things where, like...
Yeah, I think it depends, right? This is where I think just a tiny bit of education goes a long way, right? So if you're gonna act as somebody, you know what I mean? Like, I put it this way, like if a friend calls you out of the blue, right? It says, man, I'm just feeling really low. I need to chat. Right? Chances are you're going to call him and fucking talk to him. Yep. Right? You're probably not going to solve the problem. You're probably just going to go, yeah, that sounds really super shitty. Don't know what to tell you. Don't have advice for you, man. I'm glad you told me. Where do we go from here, right? There's a really funny clip, actually, and maybe we can give them a link to it, to Everybody Loves Raymond. And I always show this in my trainings that I give. And it's on active listening. I'll send it to you after this, and you can watch it. Okay. And
I'll put it in the description below so people can reference to it.
Yeah, what they're talking about is just this small little trick where somebody's saying something, but really what is the important piece is what's underneath, right? And I think you and I could probably, maybe we can spend one on like how to talk to somebody, right? And then how to listen to somebody that's talking, right?
Do another episode on that.
Yeah, but this one's great because it shows you this active listening tool, which is just like a right from the therapist toolkit on, you might be saying, fuck this, fuck that, rah, 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 like all up in arms, right? And you might sound really angry, but underneath that, you might actually just be hurt, right? So it's just like, yeah, I just call it shooting for the mark, right? And sometimes I tell people this, right? I'm just like, because, if I ask you, oh, wow, you sound really hurt. And you're like, I'm not fucking hurt. I'm whatever. It's like, I still get to the emotion at the end of it, right? So I call it shooting for the mark. No matter
actually, it happens to my wife and I quite a bit. We actually will be grumpy. We'll say, I'm not grumpy. And then we'll have a long talk, which we call a fight, but other people would be like, oh, you guys are just having a conversation. That's so nice, because we've developed that far in a relationship. Thank God. Yeah. She's wonderful in that sense. She really slows things down, and we can actually talk like adults to each other. It's great. But you're right. Like at the end of it, we're like, yeah, you're right. I was grumpy, and I had to work through everything to get to what it was that was causing that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your listening, and I appreciate your help and your conversation.
Yeah, man. And sometimes I think like I've been in situations too where, I think the most important thing we can do is call it out, right? So, on an individual level, it's just call it out. It's like, yeah, I'm feeling fucking irritated, right? And that might just be okay. I might just want to wallow in that, right? It's not hurting anybody else, whatever. I'm in my own misery because I don't want to change it, right? So that's okay, as long as I call it and people know so that they can stay clear and they understand what's going on. Nobody's got any confusion, right? That's exactly. But to draw back to your question about can we just sit down with these people? Like I think that the fear that you kind of hinted to with is it okay at any situation is sort of that fear that we need to lobby against a lot, right? Because if you would call a friend or answer the phone to a friend, it's like a colleague is kind of similar in that regard. There's nuances, of course. Like if somebody's talking about suicide, you're probably going to want to have some training to feel comfortable having a conversation like that. I don't think it's 100% crucial, but your bottom line is that you're not letting that person alone until they're seen by a doctor. Right? Like, so however that goes down, right? So,
so then you, in essence, you would encourage it, but just don't false educate or try and go down a path that you know nothing about.
Yeah, don't treat.
Yeah.
Right. Be compassionate. Speak to them like a human, but don't treat them. That one's not bad. That one doesn't set my brain on fire.
We should actually, there's another one that I sent you, how to cope with triggered trauma memories. We should probably actually do a whole episode on that. The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
We'll touch up on that one later.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's memes can go both ways, and that's something I want to relate to the viewers. It's like, just take a second look at what it is that you're going to go out and share and you're going to post, and if it makes sense to you, fine, share it. All the awareness we can get, by all means, all the help that we can get, by all means. But if it doesn't actually make sense, if you've read it second, third time, don't post it. There's just find a link and post that. Find something that actually, you deep in your heart, you're like, yeah, this can help somebody, and it might actually change somebody's life. Like that makes more sense to me.
And I think, like, at the end of the day, share what you're going to share, like you're saying, but you just be critical of why you're doing it and what it is. Right. Like, just like read it. Like, does that sound right? Does this sound like it could conceivably be true on anything else that I've heard? Right? I don't expect first responders to be therapists, right? I just don't. So, but it's just that critical thinking skill that I think just goes a step further, right? Like when we hear something fucked up in training, right? Like we're the type to go, whoa, like, you know what I mean? Like, but when it comes to this, it's because we're so afraid of it, and we're just like we've got the attitude that anything helps, and I don't. Not everything helps, man. Some of it hurts. So it's just trying to be selective as best as we can. I'll never fault anybody, like I said, for sharing something, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to kind of call it out as I see it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you need to be careful with it, right? Like, it's one of those things where I see it as if I'm gonna post something, I'm gonna hope that it's helpful. Mind you, if it's funny, that's different. If I actually think somebody's gonna laugh at it, sure, I'll post it. You know, they can enjoy it. But if it's not funny to anybody else, why would I share it?
Yeah.
Right? So if it's not educational and it's not actually tying back to something useful, then I don't know. It's like I try and use logical thinking, and I'm like the other one I posted on our page. Our first responders often struggle in silence with tape over his mouth that says "help." It's time to break the silence. Like that made sense to me because it's relatable. It's exactly how it is. Your mouth's shut because your brain's telling you no, there's danger, right? Yeah. And that one made sense to me. But like you're saying, like the other one, mental illness is not, you know. Yeah. And then they list a whole bunch of things. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. So it's just, I don't know.
Don't worry. If you ever posted something up on the page that I didn't agree with, you know, you'd hear about it. So you don't have to worry about that.
And that's good. And I should hear about it because that's the whole point of our page. It's to start the goddamn conversation. Yeah. And that's where, like, I'm going to tell our viewers right now, if you have an opinion, comment below. If you like something, if you dislike something, let's talk about it. That's the entire purpose of this channel, is to get the conversation started with everything, the entire well-being of the brotherhood and the military and nurses and doctors and anybody that might suffer with a mental illness. This could help anybody. If you're a family member and you have questions, if you're a friend and you have questions, by all means, post it in the comments. Let us know. Like, we're here to talk. We'll do a little research on it, make sure we answer it appropriately. If we can't answer it, we'll tell you.
And if we can't, we'll find someone that can and bring them on.
That's right. And I encourage that because I think having a guest on in that specific niche, I'll call it, is the best way to go about it. Because at that point, we might even be able to say, hey, we're going to have this person on and we're going to go live so people can actually interact as we're going. And one of us can kind of interview, the other one can mediate the comments. So, like, I hope that we get a lot of our viewers, you know, tagging along on our journey and participating.
Here's hoping.
Cool. Well, should we come up with a fancy catchphrase for everybody, like the fire is out or lost stop or
lost stop? Yeah.
The damage is done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have a good night. The damage is done. Yeah. Well, what do you think our sign off should be?
See you later.
See you later. All right.
People can give us their suggestions.
Oh, there you go. If you have an idea for a sign off, let us know below and comment. Like, the fire's out. Like, that's the way the cookie crumbles. All right. See you guys later.
Yeah.